The Apennines are the mountain backbone of Italy. They run northwest to southeast for about 1,200 kilometers, from Liguria to Calabria. Even the mountains in northern Sicily are considered part of the Apennines, as they are the natural continuation of these mountains before the island detached from the continent. The Apennines originate from the collision of the African and European tectonic plates about 20 million years ago. They mainly consist of limestone, sedimentary rocks and fossils of the ancient Tethys Sea from which they rose. In the Central Apennines you can find Gran Sasso, with the highest peaks of Corno Grande and its crown of summits nearly 3,000 meters above sea level. Followed by the peaks of Maiella, Velino, Sibillini, Sirente and Marsicani mountains. Italy's position in the middle of the Mediterranean has always made it a crossroads for civilizations, a merging place. The Central Apennines is the wild heart of Italy, a country that has the highest level of biodiversity in Europe. But there are inhabitants of these lands that have always been here. There are species of European wildlife that survive only in the Central Apennines. For example, the Abruzzo chamois is endemic to these mountains. It has the longest horns in its family. Its mantle shows natural golden elements on the body and face. Both in summer and winter coats, a dark stripe runs around the eyes, as if the chamois is wearing a mask. The steep cliffs and the rugged nature of the Central Apennines have always protected this wonderful animal from its predators. All but one, that is. Ruthless hunting brought this species to the brink of extinction in the early 20th century. Preserved only in the Royal Game Reserve in the La Camosciara Mountains, named after the chamois, the establishment of the Abruzzo National Park in 1923 allowed this species to thrive again. Reintroduction programs in the Gran Sasso, Maiella, Sibillini and Sirente mountains were also successful. The conservation status of this subspecies has recently passed from endangered to vulnerable. Wolves are superb predators. Their hunting techniques have inspired man since the dawn of time. Their social life is an example of discipline and efficiency. These predators have often been depicted as antagonists of hunters and livestock breeders. who have persecuted the carnivore for centuries. The comeback of the wolf across Europe is surprising, showing the species great resilience and capacity for adaptation. The Apennines also played a part in this return. In fact, starting from some refuge areas in these mountains, the wolf, which was on the brink of extinction in Italy in the 70s, has now reclaimed much of its range along the Italian peninsula. It has even interbred with wolves from neighbouring countries. In the Apennines, wolves live in packs of 5 to 6 individuals on average, though it is possible to see larger packs. The Apennine wolf was identified as a unique subspecies in 1921, like the real protagonist of this story. The Marsican Brown Bear is the king of the Apennines. It took its name from the mountain of Marsica, a sub-region of Abruzzo named after the ancient tribe of Marsi, people devoted to Mars, the god of war. Like humans, the brown bear is an opportunistic animal, able to adapt to many habitats and changing environmental conditions. A carnivore which adopted an omnivorous diet to have a larger variety of food resources to feed on. There is a visible difference between the male bear, which can reach more than 200 kilograms in weight at the end of autumn, and the female bear, which rarely exceeds 120 kilograms. When standing, the largest individuals can reach a height of 1 meter 90 centimeters, like a tall man. Brown bears are resilient. They can run at speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour. They swim well, and they're also expert climbers. They overturn boulders effortlessly and can take down large prey. Thanks to this adaptability, bears once thrived in almost all parts of Eurasia and the Americas. But the arrival of another, even more adaptable species meant decline for many bear populations. The Marsican brown bear was isolated from other populations thousands of years ago, most likely because of humans. They were hunted for their fur and even their meat. Competition for food with human communities probably led them to make their diet more dependent on fruit and vegetables, as most of the natural game was hunted. This adaptation likely altered their behavior, making them less aggressive than other bears. However, insects and meat remain part of their diet. Meat is mostly obtained from carcasses of wild and domestic animals that have been predated upon by wolves or have died of other causes. The bear remains the largest Italian carnivore. The habitat types occupied by the bears vary depending on the season and on the availability of food. Mating usually occurs between April and July. During summer and autumn, the animals feed intensively to accumulate the fat necessary to get them through the winter hibernation. This behavior is called hyperphagia. In the case of mature females, the animals also have to store extra fat to increase their chances of a successful pregnancy in the autumn. Before winter, bears choose dens in inaccessible and quiet locations. During hibernation, which can last for up to 5 months, they do not normally feed, but can interrupt their long sleep to make short excursions to forage on some occasional food sources. In the winter den, between December and February, females give birth to 1 to 3 cubs, exceptionally 4, which will weigh only between 200 and 500 grams. The high calorie content of the female's milk allows for rapid growth of the cubs, which only start to feed by themselves in the spring. Full weaning does not occur until the following autumn. The cubs remain with the mother for 1.5 years until their second spring. The females normally reproduce every 3 to 4 years. Whole sexual maturity of the female begins at 5 to 6 years of age. The Marsican bear has shared its habitat with humans for thousands of years. At the beginning of the 20th century, they were on the brink of extinction. In 1923, the Abruzzo National Park was created for this exact purpose, to save the last bears of the Apennines. In 1939, the bear became a protected species throughout Italy. However, a century later, the Apennine population is still classified as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. In the past few years, there have been some good signs of recovery. Bears seem to have spread out from their refuge areas of the Abruzzo, Lazio and Molise National Park to reclaim some of their ancient range. This process has been facilitated by a network of protected areas established across the Central Apennines since the 1990s. However, living alongside humans is never easy. The primary factor threatening Marsican bears is environmental destruction, which makes the bear's habitat less suitable. Mass tourism and excursions in sensitive areas and periods can also disturb bears, as can chasing them to photograph or film them without maintaining a respectful distance or leaving them an escape route. Habitat fragmentation is another key threat, leading to deaths on roads and railways, and to conflicts with livestock, leading to poaching and retaliatory killings. Another threat is connected to the reduced population size, potentially leading to inbreeding depression, which may cause lower fertility and higher vulnerability to infectious diseases, such as those transmitted by domestic animals. A group of highly committed conservationists and volunteers have taken action to reverse this situation. Established in 2012, Salviamo l'Orso, or Let's Save the Bear, has led to a proactive and optimistic approach among the Marsican bear conservation community. Salviamo l'Orso is collaborating with the administrations of protected areas, such as national parks and reserves, and with non-governmental organizations to reduce threats to the bear and promote growth in its population. Sometimes they exert lobbying action to fight against development projects which would alter the bear's environment irreversibly. Salviamo l'Orso always works to raise awareness among local communities and policymakers about the importance of preserving the bear as a keystone species and a living landmark. For this reason, they introduced to Italy the Bear Smart Community model from North America. This approach has shown that a set of best practices make human-bear coexistence possible. As some bears in the Apennines have developed so-called confident or problematic habits, mainly because of easy access to human-related food resources in residential areas, Salviamo l'Orso aims to facilitate coexistence with the local communities by putting up electric fencing to protect livestock, orchards and apiaries. An electric fence produces a shock that is unpleasant but not deadly. It serves as a psychological barrier that prevents bears from entering farms and gardens. Some chicken houses and stables were also reinforced with bear-proof iron gates to protect the animals and their feed, a potential easy meal for the bears. In areas more accessible to visitors, such as picnic sites, food waste may attract bears and make them food conditioned. The association deployed bear-proof trash cans to avoid this. While Salviamo l'Orso is working to reduce human-bear interactions in built-up areas, they are also recovering unused fruit orchards to preserve food sources for the bears in remote mountain areas. These fruit trees were planted decades ago by the local people. With land abandonment and the transition from a rural economy to an industrial one, the groves were progressively deserted and suffer from encroachment of antagonistic vegetation. This intervention proved extremely successful. To mitigate the risk of vehicle-bear collisions, the association has put up road signs to warn drivers to reduce speed in areas where bear crossings are more likely. These road signs have successfully gained the attention of many people visiting the area, reducing collision risk. Volunteers installed hundreds of optical and sound warning reflectors to deter wild animals from crossing busy roads at night. These devices reflect oncoming headlights out into the forest or release a high-pitched sound to warn off wildlife. In a human-dominated landscape, there are still many signs of the activities that local communities carried out in the past. The use of barbed wire fencing to protect farmland has restricted wild species and domestic cattle from roaming in these areas. These fences in natural ecosystems impede access to animals while also acting as functional barriers, further reducing the frequency of animal movements. Salviamo l'Orso, with the help of its partner organisation Rewilding Apennines, has removed thousands of meters of barbed wire from wildlife corridors, improving the connection between the main protected areas in the region. The scarcity of natural pools of water in these karst mountains once led the people to build water wells to retain rain or melt water. Now, these wells may pose a deadly threat to wildlife, which would fall into them and drown. Salviamo l'Orso is making them safe again. A long tradition of sheep farming has always led to interactions between sheepdogs and carnivores like the bear and the wolf. As these dogs are traditionally used as work animals, and the shepherds do not always comply with animal welfare rules, the association's vet is vaccinating sheepdogs. This to prevent outbreaks of potentially lethal infectious diseases, such as distemper and parvovirus, to wild carnivores.
380-236. Vado? 014.
As the presence of bears grows in areas they had disappeared from many years ago, the association is monitoring their movements and planning conservation actions. Working with protected area officials, the volunteers are deploying camera traps and detecting signs of the presence of bears, such as overturned boulders, droppings, and hair left on rub trees. All these efforts would not have been possible without the generous support of donors and the commitment of a large group of local and international volunteers. Every year, Salviamo l'Orso welcomes young conservationists volunteering their time and skills for the protection of this invaluable animal species. This is done mainly through the Erasmus Plus program. The extent of damage caused by bears has dramatically decreased in key areas of their range. The popularity of the Marsican Brown Bear has grown in public opinion. The number of cubs born every year is increasing encouragingly, but there is still a lot to do to reduce the death rates of bears due to interactions with humans. This is still too high for such a small population. Many people, and especially politicians, say that they cherish the bear, expressing concern over its conservation status, but then they fail to take bears into account when they are making relevant decisions. The survival of the Marsican Brown Bear is still uncertain. We can all commit ourselves to ensure this subspecies, unique in the world, can live and thrive again in the mountains of the Central Apennines, the Bearland.